Hi everyone, my name is Gwen. I am the Golden Pomegranate, and I wanted to come on today to talk a little bit about the Aquarius new moon, the black moon, and the Chinese New Year, just to see what we can figure out about what's coming up. Maybe we can get some advice from the Thoth Tarot. So the first thing I want to say is that when I post about the black moon, what do I mean by that? Because I know that not that many people post about the black moon. Some people post about the new moon. In fact, most people post about the new moon. So what's the difference, and what am I talking about when I say black moon? So I think of the black moon as a phase, kind of a mini phase within the new moon. And it's also called the witch's new moon. And basically what it is when you can't see the crescent moon yet. So the new moon, I think astronomically, and most astrologers count the new moon as, one whole phase that starts in a few hours actually. But I like to use the witch's moon because it gives you some time in between lunar cycles to rest. I always feel like I'm sort of rushed into the next cycle. One ends, okay, time to start the next one. So I like having those 3 days, maybe 2 or 3 days between cycles to rest and to think about what's coming up. And so I draw cards for those 3 days and say, well, what can we do to get ready for the new moon? And in my feed, I've posted today what my cards were today. I think I have them here. And yes, so what I drew today for the black moon, this should be left. I don't know if this is left or right. It doesn't really matter, actually, in a way. You start with the Queen of Swords and go to the Two of Cups and then the Queen of Wands. And what this means is that you're traveling the path of the Empress on the Tree of Life. So as with a lot of readings that I do for the black moon, it's very interesting. I usually get readings about self-care and nurturing, taking a break, letting yourself rest. And so that's really what the Empress is about. The Empress is, in some respects, the Empress is about rest and self-care. So that's a really lovely message for the 2 or 3 days that you have coming up to the new moon. But what should you be doing? What can you be preparing for? Well, with the Queen of Swords, you're cutting away misunderstandings, misconceptions. You're cutting away illusions so that you can see love and bring that back. Because what you're doing on the Tree of Life is traveling from Bina in the third Sephira at the top, just right across to number 2, and then back. And that is the path of the Empress. That's why I brought the Empress in. So that's what's important here, is traveling this path of the Empress and love for yourself and others. And then you're coming back to the Queen of Wands, who is about action, and she's about confidence and really beautiful, fiery action. So you're thinking and you're getting your head straight, and then you're going to act. And it really reminds me of that expression that we associate with Rumi about your job is not to look for love, but just to remove all the obstacles that you have put in place. And that's really what this feels like. So it feels like we have a little bit of time to get ready before the new moon, and which also is the Chinese New Year. That's why I'm wearing green and red, because it's the year of the wood dragon. And the colors for this particular, I think for the dragon in general, are green, red, and gold. So you can wear these colors this year to bring yourself good fortune. But it's really quite interesting because, green is, I love green. So I thought, well, I'll just look up what this means. And when you're thinking about the wood element, wood is associated with spring. It's associated with that kind of fiery energy. So it works very well with fire. And you're talking about new things. So dragon is very auspicious. He's very powerful and ambitious and charismatic. And so these two things go very well together. You can see why it's considered to be such an auspicious year. And apparently, people who follow this kind of calendar, they plan to have their children during a dragon year if they can, because it's such an auspicious year to be born, which is really nice. So we're heading into a very powerful year, which is a big difference from what we had last year, which I think was a rabbit year. So much less self-expression, much less energy and support for going out and making your changes in the world, for producing something, for developing something. So it's a very energetic year. So we've got 3 days now. I mean, the Chinese New Year is usually celebrated over 2 or 3 days, I think. This year it's the 10th to the 12th of February. So that's this weekend, basically. So you still do have another couple of days to get ready. And in the Tibetan system, which I'm actually more familiar with, the Tibetan system is called Losar. It's celebrated on the 10th this year, primarily celebrated on the 10th. And what you do to get ready for that is you clean your house. It's always kind of bad news for me. I don't like doing these things, but you're supposed to clean your house, clean the whole house, clean those places that you don't normally clean. In Scotland, I think they call it the high cleaning. So you get those cobwebs out of the corners, maybe clean the drapes, that kind of thing. But also clean your shrine. It's important to clean the place where you spend your spiritual time, clean your meditation corner, that kind of thing. So we also wanted to talk a little bit about the thoth cards for Aquarius, since we're in the Aquarius new moon. I know I'm switching back and forth between systems here, but it makes sense to me. So I hope it makes sense to you too. And in the last video that we did, we talked about the star, because Aquarius is represented by the star. This is an Aquarius card, absolutely beautiful. It's an air card. And the minors are quite interesting. So the minors, you have the 5, 6, and 7 of swords. And these are all right across the middle of the tree of life. And I'm sorry I don't have a tree of life to show you. The last time I did one of these videos, I drew a tree of life and it was backwards, and it's really difficult for me to figure out what I'm saying and to make it sensible for you. So what I'm going to do for the next one, I've got myself an art book with big piece of paper, and so I'm going to draw one backwards, and then I'll be able to hopefully show you what I'm talking about on the tree of life. So if you can just imagine, maybe you know what that structure looks like, what that tree of life structure looks like, the geometric tree of life that starts at the top, and you have these spheres that go down from 1 to 10. And so when you have the Aquarius cards, these are all the Aquarius cards, so they are associated with the star. You're going across the middle of the tree of life from 5 to 6 to 7, and you're translating, maybe transiting, crossing from above to below, because you're starting. I look at the tree of life as divided in half. I imagine a horizontal line that goes through Tiferet right in the middle. And so you're as you go down the tree of life, you're becoming more solid, more material anyway. And that's a big transition point. So you're coming from the 5 of swords, going through the 6 of swords, and then to the 7 of swords. So they're swords, which is a difficult suit. It's a tricky suit. I think nobody really likes to get swords. I'm trying to think if there's a happy swords. Maybe the 2 of swords is pretty good, because the 2 of swords is about peace restored or peace before anything has happened. I remember I read once that Crowley said he called his 2 of swords the Lord of Peace rather than the Lord of Peace Restored, which I think is a traditional name, because he thought that at that point on the tree of life in Chokmah, at the very top, number 2, it's only the second Sephira, that nothing can really have gone wrong yet. And so in the context of the tree of life, that makes a lot of sense. But in maybe real world type situations, the 2 of swords it's nice to think of it as being, things being rebalanced in a way. Peace restored, I think, is quite nice. But when we get to the 5, 6, and 7, so we've got some challenging swords here. We've got the 5 of swords, which is defeat. Six of Swords, which is science, that's nice, and the Seven of Swords, which is futility. And we are in the third decan of Aquarius at the moment, so this is the card. If you want to find out more about this card, you can go to, there's a page here called Numinous Press, and the author of that page talks about the cards associated with each decan, and she is saying some very interesting things about the color of this card, which I really noticed because, you know, I take pictures of these cards and I put them in posts, and this is an impossible card to take a picture of and make it look nice, even if it's by itself. But when you put it in the context of other cards, the camera just does not respond well. And I thought it was very interesting that on Numinous Press, she says that this is actually unusual in the sense that the color for this card is kind of a yellowy green, which is not my favorite shade of green. It's actually the shade of peridot stones, which is my birthstone. So I try to come to terms with yellow green, but it's not my favorite green. But that's the color of this card, and it is not on here anywhere. This is just a really nice color blue that Heather says is associated with the moon. So it's a very interesting page. If you're interested in colors and decans and all of that, go see Numinous Press. And so we can look at the progression here, I think, at the moment we're working through these cards in Aquarius. And something I think is interesting is that the Star and Five of Swords here have very similar colors, I think. And I like the association. It's got the same kind of pinks and blues going on there. Let's see if I can see. And so that makes me think of this as a reversed star. So, and when I see reversals, I don't often read with reversals. One of the ways that I interpret reversals when I get them is, especially when it's a 5, is what can I do to turn this right side up? That's what I think the message is this is upside down, things are out of order, particularly with the 5s, because you have this upside down star. And when you think about a 5-pointed star in Thoth Tarot, it's representing the 5 elements with spirit, ether at the top. And that's where it needs to be. Spirit needs to be at the top, both because that's your priority at the top, but that's your nature. And things are just out of order if you don't have spirit at the top. So what can you do to turn this upright? And in the Six of Swords, you've done that. You've balanced everything out. Everything is coming together. You've got the 6. You've got this hexagon, which represents the center of the tree of life. Everything is in balance. All the planets are in balance. And so when you have this 6 design, it slightly rearranges the tree of life a little bit, because technically you have Saturn up out of that middle hexagon. But when we're drawing this, we bring Saturn back down so that you have the 6 main planets, which is Saturn, Jupiter. It goes around like this. So it goes Saturn, Jupiter, Venus, the moon at the bottom, and then Mercury and Mars. And so that's the order around here. So everything is in order. You have access to all of these planets. The moon is a planet, of course, in this context. And everything is balanced. You've learned, everything has opened up. You have this beautiful cross in the center. And then when you get to, and then you cross over that horizontal plane that I was talking about in Tiferet, and you get into the 7s. And the 7s are all difficult. I think that it's because you've just transitioned, haven't you? That's the word I was looking for, transitioned. You've transitioned from the top to the bottom, from above to below. And that's going to be hard. And the 7s is actually where you lose contact. You lose that constant awareness that you are divine, that constant connection of being divine. And so it's very confusing. We don't know what to do in the 7s. And one of the important things about the 7s, I think, is timing. And with this card, futility, it's about thinking. And you can see the cards, all the swords they're sort of chipping away at the middle one. All the hilts are different. So you have those. So it's representative, again, of the 6 of Swords. You have all these different swords. Here they're working well together, and here they're not. Here they're all attacking each other because you've got so many thoughts, and it's just self-defeating. All this thinking is self-defeating. So the trick with this, the timing with the 7 of Swords, is to know when to stop thinking and when to act. Because one of the kind of pitfalls of the sevens is that it can be difficult to get out of them, because you end up either in a cycle or you end up pretty comfortable. You know, the Seven of Cups can be pretty comfortable, really, having a lot of options, but eventually you have to make a choice and you have to go on. And that's the same thing here. Eventually you have to stop thinking and you have to make a choice and you have to go on. So the other thing I wanted to talk a little bit about is the Eon of Horus and the Age of Aquarius, because they overlap. It is quite interesting. If you look up the Age of Aquarius, try to figure out when did it start, when is it going to start, you find that there are millions of different opinions. Some astrologers think that the Age of Aquarius started already, and we're in the middle of it, pretty well into it. And some astrologers will say that it's getting ready to start. It certainly does feel like it. It does feel like there's more of an awareness of the Age of Aquarius, and it kind of overlaps with Aleister Crowley's Eon of Horus. The Eon of Horus comes from his book, the Book of the Law, which was narrated to him in a kind of a meditation download from a spiritual being called Aiwass. And he created, this is where Thelema comes from. This is where the religion, Crowley's religion, Thelema, comes from. And the Eon of Horus, as far as he was concerned, started in 1904, which is when he had this download. So we've been in the Eon of Horus for a little while. But in the greater context of things, of ages and eons, maybe we're just kind of getting our footing really in the Eon of Horus. Well, what happens in the Eon of Horus? What is it? Before the Eon of Horus, there was the Eon of Isis. And the Eon of Isis is kind of ancient times, like Sumer and Babylonia, these kinds of time periods. Then you had, and that was characterized by a goddess culture. Then you had the Age of Osiris, which is classical times, medieval times, up into kind of the late 19th century, maybe, if we give ourselves a little bit of buffer there between them. And that was when we had a father god, and we had this kind of hierarchical structure. It is really interesting, isn't it? I think it's fascinating. And then we're moving out of that into the Eon of Horus. And I really feel like this is happening because certainly even within the tarot culture, the tarot community, you have this idea, we're moving away from structured religion. We're moving away from churches. And we have for a while, maybe 15 years, 20 years. I mean, it's been building up certainly, but now you just see a lot of people in this spiritual community who have decided, well, that really doesn't work for me anymore. And it's the authority that's the problem. It's having one person at the top who makes all the rules. And so we're moving more toward a community-based, which is what the Age of Aquarius is all about. The sign of Aquarius is about the community. And it's about serving the community, which you can see in the symbol of Aquarius, which is the water bearer. And Terry of Amethyst Astro Tarot was telling me after my last live that the water bearer is based on Ganymede, who was a very handsome young man, and Zeus took a liking to him, so he brought Ganymede up to Mount Olympus and made him his cupbearer. And so he would be the one who served him his wine at dinner. And if you think about that position, it's quite an interesting position to be in, because it's a fantastic job to have. It's very auspicious. It's very lucky, very powerful position, because you're serving Zeus. At the same time, you're in a position of service. You're very trusted because Zeus trusts him not to poison his wine, or I suppose technically if you're talking about real cupbearers in the past, they would taste everything, make sure there was no poison in it. But it's a really interesting position, and so it brings in this element of service, which I think is an element of Aquarius, because it is community minded. So if we're thinking about, being in the Age of Aquarius and relating more to everybody, bringing responsibility to everybody, letting us take more control of our lives, taking responsibility for each other rather than relying on somebody to take care of us, which is the more sort of patriarchal idea. The Eon of Horus is the same thing. The Eon of Horus allows us to self-actualize, and so we can become who we are because we're not so busy being controlled. This is my theory. We're not so busy being told, we don't believe necessarily that we're part of this structure where we all have to work for somebody else. We're working for each other now, and so we understand how things work a little bit better. Okay, so I think that's really all I had to say. I wanted to wish you all a very happy new moon in Aquarius. I think it's going to come, it'll be when you can see the crescent moon in the sky. And of course, that can be a problem if it's cloudy, but 2 or 3 days, sort of 2 or 3 days from when the astrological new moon starts. That's when I count the actual new moon in terms of getting traction and being able to do something, because that's when the moon is actually engaging with us again. During the black moon, during these next 2 or 3 days, it's not engaging with us because we can't see it, we can't feel its energy. So it's just, a good time to rest and get ready for the new moon, get ready for the new Chinese New Year, which is the wood dragon, and wood is associated with color green. So it's a green dragon. It's going to be a very auspicious year, a very powerful year. Wood giving you the fuel, especially for fire signs. Apparently, it's really going to be good for fire signs because wood gives the fuel to fire. So Happy New Year, everybody. Happy Chinese New Year. Happy Losar. And I will see you in the next video. Thank you for coming. Bye.